It's no surprise to anyone that knows me that Dark Souls has slowly taken over my life over the last few years. It went from being one of the first single player games I rage quit to being easily one of my favourite games ever. So when From Software announced they were doing a remaster, I was a little bit, well, excited. The few things we know for definite is we'll have 6-player multiplayer with dedicated servers, which means PvP won't suck, and we should be expecting a minimum of 1080p 60fps on all consoles, apart from the Switch, which will only run in 1080p 30fps whilst connected to your TV. Have fun in Blighttown. The PC version will be an exception, running at a native 4K with 2K unconverted textures and again 60fps. We should expect these frame rates to be locked, as we know already that Dark Souls can have issues when the frame rate is higher than desired. Other than that, we're in the dark, so here's my list of things that I'm expecting to see within the remaster. There are some things that Dark Souls 1 did so well that just became too easy and I guess too accessible for new players in the later games. One example of this is boss weapons. In Dark Souls 1, to acquire boss weapons, you have to ascend a +10 weapon of the same type that the boss uses. So in order to get Smo's hammer, you have to upgrade a hammer to +10, then speak to the giant blacksmith specifically, and then you'll get an option to upgrade to Smo's hammer. This is kind of cryptic, and it took some knowledge and really made you feel like you'd achieved something when you finally cracked the code. In a real hint you get from the item description of the soul that says acquire a huge amount of souls or create a unique boss weapon. Not a lot to go on. In Dark Souls 3, however, you kill a boss, talk to dude, and he gives you the boss weapon. I was actually kind of happy with this when I first played Dark Souls 3, but after going back to Dark Souls 1 for another 100 hours, it just felt really easy and really out of place. I'm not saying the game needs to be hard, I'm just saying it added a small amount to the game's crafting system and made getting boss weapons more of a chore. I mean, after all, it's a fucking boss weapon, you shouldn't be able to get it in 2 seconds. I really hope they keep this system the same in the remaster. I mean, they changed it in Dark Souls 3, so there's no reason why they wouldn't change it again for the remaster, right? Right? Remember in Dark Souls 3, how easy it was to eat multiple souls at once, or to give a covenant multiple items at once? Dark Souls 1 isn't that easy. You see, in Dark Souls 1, if you wanted to consume 3 or 4 souls, you had to sit there one by one till you had taken all of them. Same for covenants, if you wanted to give the dragon dude 30 dragon scales, one at a time. The worst, and I mean the absolute worst, was giving Quilag's sister 30 humanity for a covenant. Doesn't seem like a lot, but you had to take 30 humanity, one by one, watching the animation go every time. Then you had to give her all 30 of them, one by one, and watch the animation go by. And why?
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
This process takes about 10 minutes to do. It's just a basic quality of life improvement that the game should have implemented from the start. So if they could just change that to make it work the same way it does in Dark Souls 3, that'd be very good. I'm probably going to be all by myself on this one, but I feel being able to walk and heal at the same time was kind of a bad feature in the later games. In Dark Souls 1, the combat is based on you not being able to move whilst you're healing. That was the sole purpose of it. It's based on you being vulnerable whilst you're getting HP back. In Dark Souls 3, I've had times where I've narrowly escaped a hit from a boss because I've just walked out of their range whilst drinking some fucking Iron Brew. In Dark Souls 1, you're expected to make a choice. Do you use the window that you've got to attack the boss, or do you play it safe and heal? Allowing the player to move whilst healing in the remaster will mean they'll have to overhaul the entire combat system from the game, which could potentially make or break the game for me depending on how they do it. Dark Souls 1 always strived because it was very bare bones mechanics. There wasn't all of these amazing bells and whistles that you get in the newer games, and it worked, it was great. So I'm hoping in the remaster they understand that and keep it back to basics. One word, warping. This is something I'm 100% sure they are not going to change in the remaster, but it gives me a little bit of time to rant about it, I suppose. In Dark Souls 1, warping between bonfires was a luxury. You gained it by beating what most people will call one of the hardest bosses in the game, and I think it's a pretty solid reward. But in Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3, warping is available from the start of the game. I mean, I understand why they did this, is so that you can teleport back to the hub area, level up, do your crafting, whatever, and then go back to what you were doing. That's just great, it's perfect. But why does that exist? Why would I need to teleport away from where I am, stopping progress so that I can go back and level up and do my armor and all the rest of it? It doesn't make any sense. In Dark Souls 1, before you get the ability to teleport, you have to walk all the way back to the blacksmith if you want to level up your stuff. But in the later games, you just get a hub area that has access to, you know, a merchant, a blacksmith, the level up lady. There's everything. You don't really need them out in the world anymore. You always felt like there was more people in the world with you in Dark Souls 1. You know, you'd walk around, you'd hear Andre's hammer from miles away, and you'd think, oh, what's that thing? And then when you finally get there, you realise it's a good guy, and it's a friendly, you know, it's a good place to be. It gives you a gesture. But in Dark Souls 3 and Dark Souls 2, you don't really meet many NPCs out in the world. I mean, yeah, you do, but none of them are as helpful as Andre was, and he was a fucking bro. And the only reason that you meet Andre is because you can't warp anywhere. You don't need to walk back to the blacksmith that's waiting for you in Firelink Shrine, because there isn't one. You find him out in the world and use him out in the world. He doesn't move anywhere. I said it before, but I'm still 100% positive that they're not going to change this feature in the remake. I mean, it would kind of break the immersion that Dark Souls 1 has, because Dark Souls 1 always had more depth than the other games for me. Dark Souls 1 always made you feel like you were so small and the world was massive because everything interlinked and it was amazing. But it's only doing that because you can't teleport around everywhere, so you get a sense of just how big the world is and how intricate and amazing the fucking geometry is. I mean, take the first time you visit Anor Londo in Dark Souls 1, you see that shit and you hear the big music over it and you're like, oh, this is gonna be a spooky area. Even from the first area in Dark Souls 3, you're in a big fucking castle, but it never really felt that big to me as you barely visit half of it and you get teleported there from the start. You really lose that sense of discovery, and it's that sense of discovery that made me fall in love with Dark Souls in the first place. So the last thing I want to see from the remaster is quite simple. I just want Dark Souls 1. A lot of people have been saying they expect the game to be Dark Souls 3 cosplaying as Dark Souls 1, and I really hope that isn't the case. Dark Souls 1 was a huge milestone and an even bigger statement on the video game franchise that FromSoft really needs to make every change they do justified and not stray too far from what made it my favourite game. Dark Souls 1's bare-bone mechanics and really in-depth storyline was the main appeal. I liked having to run all the way back to the Undead Parish if I wanted to talk to Andre. I liked how I couldn't move whilst I was healing. I liked that the game was so open from the start that you could do most of the early game bosses before even ringing the first bell. Dark Souls 1 is one of the most open games I've played. You can go to places where you're going to get one-shot by all the enemies from the start of the game, and the more experienced players will go to these areas to get some of the more advanced weapons early on. Dark Souls 3 doesn't offer any of this, as you're on a set path for most of the game, and you can't really stray too far from it. The small things like that is what made Dark Souls one of my favourite games, and I really hope that... Actually, you know what? Fuck this game. Cheers so much for watching. I'll probably make some more videos like this in the future, if I can find the motivation to do anything. Be sure to check out my other videos, and like, and comment, and all that jazz. Yeah.